I want to talk now about the difference between vector and raster in Photoshop. So vector, um, vector type or like shapes in Photoshop are completely editable. And um, as you can see in this image, the vector has these little points that go around the outside of the shape. And the beautiful thing about vector is you can make it as big as a house and it'll look crisp and clean. Um, the images and a lot of the other things that we use in Photoshop are raster. And you can tell something's raster by these little kind of pixelated dots around the outside. So you can see this isn't crisp and clean. The reason it's important to understand the difference between vector and raster in Photoshop, especially in relationship to type, is that vector type is completely editable. Once you rasterize type, which you will want to do because certain filters and effects are only available if you rasterize it, you aren't able to change the type again. You're like, so if you have dog written, you aren't able to change the type and write cat. So once you rasterize something, it's flat and it's not editable. So that's just something important to remember between vector and raster. So right now we're going to go over how to rasterize type and start applying different effects to vector and raster type. Um, so I actually spelled raster wrong. I'm going to fix that really quick while it's still editable. All right, so remember from our previous lesson, we use the type tool to have different type layers. We've got a vector layer, a raster type layer, and then a paragraph text layer. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to go ahead and rasterize our type to start trying to apply different filters, paint strokes, and fills. So this is how you rasterize type. Go ahead and make sure you have your raster type layer activated in Photoshop. And there's a couple different places you can access the rasterizing option. The first one is if you go up to Layer, Raster, if I can find it, Layer, Raster, Type. So that's kind of the one breadcrumb way to do it. Or you can go over to your Layers panel and you can right click on the layer and you can also access raster type there. So a couple different places to access it. But the big thing I want you to notice is once I hit raster type, there's a big change in the information in my layer. So notice that the T that was indicating it was a type layer is now gone. And I have turned this type into an image, into shapes. So I'm no longer able to use my type tool to edit this image. It's completely flat. But the cool thing about rasterizing your layers is that some of the filters and options, like I said before, are now available that might not have been available before. So one of those is like distorting. So let's go ahead and make sure you have this layer selected, and let's go ahead and distort it. So we're going to go up to Edit, Transform, and notice all these transformations are available to me right now. They're all black, and I could use them. And go ahead and hit Distort on the raster layer. And I'm just going to go ahead and distort this a little bit. Maybe make it look a little like it's coming out at me. And once I am happy with that, remember you can hit return on your keyboard or you can click the checkbox at the top to confirm your transformation. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up a little bit. I don't want it on my paragraph type. I'm going to move my vector. Graphic designer in me starts to come into play. So say I want to try applying that same transformation to my vector type layer. Let's try it and see what happens. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and notice a lot of these options are available. We've got scale, rotate, skew, warp, all these rotation and flips are available, but distort and perspective are not available because my layer is still a type layer. So that's just the big difference is you're going to be able to apply some different things to a rasterized layer that you won't be able to apply to a vector layer. Another fun thing that you can do is you can apply some layer styles to your and gradient overlays. And I want you to play around with that for a minute. See, I'm going to click on my raster layer, and let's go ahead and go down here to layer styles. Remember, that's the FX icon. And let's try adding a gradient overlay, which is pretty cool. Maybe I'll choose a different one. Say okay. And a lot of the layer styles are actually available too for your vector images too. So let's go ahead and do a pattern overlay. I'll do this one. Oh, didn't work on that type. Let's see if we can do it on this guy. So it's good just to play around and try and see what is available. I think I have to get rid of my gradient. This isn't a great pattern to use apparently. Maybe I'll try this guy. Oh, so pattern overlay is not going to work on here, I guess. So I'll throw it away. But the big difference here and the big takeaway here is I want you to play around and see what you're able to use and what you're not able to use in terms of filters on your different types of vector or raster images. So yeah, we'll go ahead and I think you can add drop shadows. Let's see. Yeah, so drop shadows. So here's my pattern overlay isn't going to work, so I'll go ahead and throw that away. But you got a nice drop shadow, you got a gradient. But remember, the perspective was only available once I rasterized my image. So that's a quick, just quick tutorial on how to rasterize a type layer and start playing around with different types of filters and transformations.